There was once a Trappist monk who belonged to a very strict order, and he was allowed to say only 2 words every 3 years. After the first 3 years, he said to the abbot who was in charge of the monastery, "Bad bed." 3 years later, he came back and said, "Bad food." After 3 more years of silence, the monk said, "No TV." Another 3 years passed. But this time the monk appeared with his robes and his sandals in his hands and announced, "I quit." And the abbot answered him, "It's no wonder. You've done nothing but complain since you got here." Stories. They're a part of who we are, aren't they? Many of us will have stories about ourselves, things we've done, places we've been, people that we've met. Stories which many of us are only too glad to get out, dust down, and tell again at an appropriate time, or maybe an inappropriate time. They tell something about us, don't they? They bring us into the depths of our character. Stories can even give us a glimpse into a desired reality that we want. A parable is a story that tries to do just that. Parables were stories that Jesus used to point the listener to some deeper understanding of what it means to be people of God's kingdom. Now, the parables were analogous stories where Jesus took things from that particular culture of the day: agriculture, shepherding, relationship with tax collectors, Samaritans, and so on. He took those things and wove them into stories in order to point to what it means to live in a deep and meaningful relationship with God, with others, and with the wider world. So as we read these stories, we need to be asking, what is Jesus saying to us through those stories today? We'll want to place ourselves in the midst of those stories and see how they open up a deeper understanding of what it means to live as a follower of Jesus in the 21st century. Let's just pause for a moment and hear one of Jesus' best known stories. That same day, Jesus went out of the house and sat by the lake. Such large crowds gathered around him that he got into a boat and sat in it while all the people stood on the shore. Then he told them many things in parables, saying, "A farmer went out to sow his seed. As he was scattering the seed, some fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Some fell on rocky places where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow. But when the sun came up, the plants were scorched and they withered because they had no root. Other seed fell among thorns which grew up and choked the plants. Still other seed fell on good soil which produced a crop, 100, 60, or 30 times what was sown. Whoever has ears, let them hear." Listen then to what the parable of the sower means. When anyone hears the message about the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what was sown in their heart. This is the seed sown along the path. The seed falling on rocky ground refers to someone who hears the word and at once receives it with joy. But since they have no root, they last only a short time. When trouble or persecution comes because of the word, they quickly fall away. The seed falling among the thorns refers to someone who hears the word, but the worries of this life and the deceitfulness of wealth choke the word, making it unfruitful. But the seed falling on good soil refers to someone who hears the word and understands it. This is the one who produces a crop, yielding 100, 60, or 30 times what was sown. So Jesus has a large crowd following him. Never missing an opportunity to engage with people, he finds a place in a boat with the people gathered all around the shore of the bay, and he speaks to the crowd. And he tells a story. He uses this imagery of a sower, a farmer, who was sowing seeds in the field with the hope of producing a good crop. When we hear this story read, it's really not hard to imagine that Jesus is the farmer in this story, and the seed is the message that he is the way to life in God's kingdom. He is the way to a relationship with God and a life of meaning and deep peace. The seed then is the good news about Jesus. The good crop is the followers of Jesus who stake their entire lives on the gospel, the good news. They fed, watered, and nurtured it so that faith can grow strong and healthy. The whole parable is wrestling with the idea of what it means to understand the message of Jesus, the good news of God's kingdom, the life of heaven coming to earth, the good news of a world put right. To really get to the heart of this parable, we need to walk with the farmer through the different plantings. That way we can see what they have to say and what they continue to say to us today. In the first planting, seed is scattered, but some birds come down and eat it before it can take root. The message of the gospel never had a chance to be implanted into the soil. The soil is our soul. It's the centre of our being. The place Jesus offers to come and live. But here the message is gathered up by the evil forces that work against God, and it's stolen away. What might this part of the story look like for us today? Well, we live in a world where there is constant competition between the message of Jesus and a whole load of competing stories too. Sometimes other messages, stories and viewpoints become our focus, and they dominate our way of thinking, our world views. So instead of the message of Jesus being planted in our soul, we end up being led off by alternative ones. We end up defined not by God's incredible love for us, but by our political positions, by our consumerism, our loyalties, by our own self. All of us are susceptible to this, so it really is all about finding ways of ordering our lives in such a way as to stay rooted in Jesus. The very fact that you're watching or listening to this means that you are somewhere on that journey. But of course it's a journey we do together, and it's a journey on which we need nurturing and feeding in a whole number of ways. But the story goes on, and the farmer planted other seeds as well. Unlike the first planting though, the second time round some did take root in the soil. The message of Jesus was able to reach into their heart. The seed came up quickly, but the roots didn't grow deep. This plant did not last long because it didn't have anything to hold on to and sustain it. This describes a shallow faith, doesn't it? Our faith is shallow when we have a superficial relationship with God and when we never seek to grow in that relationship. We say that we believe, but we never pray. We don't meet regularly with other Christians. Lockdown notwithstanding, of course. It's a faith that says it believes, but which actually never really lives it out. You see, our roots must have the chance to grow deep in the soil. For plants to survive, the roots have to push deep down, deep below the surface. That's the case with our faith in Jesus. We need that living water that's found in Him alone. And it doesn't happen by accident. We have to be intentional about developing a way, a rhythm of life, which gives us access to the depths of all God is and which sustains us through the whole of life. We've lots of resources available, not least the community of soul friends, which can help our roots go down deeper to find that living water. Why not take a look at some of them this summer? And then we move on to the third seed. The farmer plants it, but it lands among the weeds. The new life which is there in the seed is choked and it dies off. It had a chance to flourish, but the things around it controlled it and took the life away from the plant. That is a picture of a life that's heard the message of Jesus, but has fallen away over time. The pressures of this world just become too much. Instead of growing, they choose to walk away. In the difficult moments of life, the challenges that we all face, and we really all do face them, the life caught up in the weeds is likely to walk away and to say, this just isn't what I signed up for. I was promised a life of blessings, that everything would be wonderful. But this isn't what I expected. But the message of Jesus is not that life will be easy or that we won't have troubles. In fact, Jesus says, in this life you will have trouble, but I give you my peace. It may not even be the difficult moments in life, like health, death of a loved one, relationship struggles and so forth, but also our own desires. When we become too focused on our need for money or success or any number of other things that we end up making our priority in life, if we do that, we drown out the message of Jesus because we're living a different story. For our faith to grow, we do need to be rooted in the living waters of Jesus. But we also need to be in relationship with other Christians. God calls us into a communal faith, a faith that's lived in community, in the family of God. And we need people alongside us who we can call on in the difficult moments, people we are in relationship with. So the call to follow Jesus, the call to grow in the knowledge of God's love for us, is a call to be together. If we want to overcome life's challenges, then we need to do it together. We really do need one another. And finally, there's a picture of hope, though. The message takes root. When the message of Jesus penetrates our soul and goes down deep into our hearts, it begins to transform us, and it connects with that living water. We become centered on him. He becomes our guide, our focal point, our inspiration. This is the beautiful plant, the one that's rooted in his love. And it's a plant that will bear fruit for God in the world. It's a life that will make a difference for him, drawing others towards him and being a blessing in all sorts of ways. And so, 4 seeds, each with a story to tell. We could probably find part of ourselves in each of those seeds. We've probably been one or more at different points in our lives, and no doubt we will be in the future too. It really is a lifelong journey with ups and downs. We never have it sorted. But no matter what seed you are today, I really do want to encourage you to grow in faith, because it's never ever too late. If the seed was taken away from you at one point, the farmer, Jesus, is ready to bring it back afresh. If your faith has lacked the joy and peace that you had hoped for, Jesus is calling to you to show you what it means to have a faith that is deeply rooted in his love. If there are weeds in your life, Jesus and his movement in the world, the church, are there to help us get untangled and find a life-giving rhythm of life so that we can grow and so that we can flourish as human beings. And just very briefly, something else struck me about this parable just this last week. Does it, I wonder, tell us something about the love of God for all the world? He scatters his goodness near and far, giving and giving and giving, even though he knows some of it, perhaps a lot of it, won't take root. But he keeps on scattering the seed. He keeps on loving. He keeps on reaching out, because that is his nature. The love of God is completely self-giving, always there for us. He wants to fill us up with love and hope and with peace so that it overflows to the world around us. But when all is said and done, it's up to us what we do with that love. Will we accept it? Will we allow it to be nurtured, or will we let it die within us? Will you accept God's love and let it germinate within your heart, within your soul? Will we ourselves Follow the extravagant and patient example of God and keep on scattering that seed, not counting the cost, so that others can find the life that Jesus came to bring them. So then, can you identify with one or more of the seeds in Jesus' story today? Do you need to think about how our seeds of faith are being nourished at the moment? How can we nurture the seeds that Jesus has placed within us so that they can grow healthily and truly into something wonderful, something which can be an example of what a life lived close to God might look like? A life in which God plants a seed of holy discontent about something you feel passionate about. A life which makes a difference, bringing light to darkness, bringing hope into places where there is no hope. So may the seeds of God's incredible love take root within you, and may you learn to live in such a way and in such a life-giving and nourishing rhythm that you can do exactly that.